Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. The National Caucus and Center on Black Aging Incorporated, NCBA, and Goodwin Living welcome you to our webinar today on Building Stronger Memory for Healthy Aging. Our presenters today are Jessica Fredrickson and Ron Liebring. Jessica Fredrickson is the Director of Brain Health at Goodwin Living, where she leads brain training and programs locally and throughout the country. She has a Master of Social Work with a concentration in gerontology from Washington University in St. Louis. She is also a certified dementia practitioner and trainer. Rob Liebring is the CEO and president of Goodwin Living, a faith-based nonprofit which supports over 3,000 older adults in the Northern Virginia and Washington, D.C. area. He earned his degree in business from Georgetown University and his MBA from Johns Hopkins University with a focus on senior care and housing. He is also a certified dementia practitioner. Thank you both, Jessica and Rob, for joining us today. And Jessica, I will turn this part of the webinar over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're so excited to be here with you all. We're going to share a little bit about Goodwin Living and what our Stronger Memory program is, which we think will be really beneficial for this group. Rob, if you want to switch to the next slide.
Mm-hmm.
There we go.
All right. Well, thank you so much. It's great to be with you all. Angela, thank you so much for having us and presenting today. We just wanted to share the mission of our Goodwin Living organization is to support, honor, and uplift. And we hope that you'll get some of that uplift today. You might have seen the first picture that we started with, which was our pickleball courts out at the Goodwin House, Bailey's Crossroads. Real pickleball courts, a place where I had the chance to lose to 2 residents 11-0 just the other day. So I don't know how many of you play pickleball, but getting exercise, movement will be probably the most important thing you can do for your brain health and your overall health. But we're certainly going to share more about other things you can do for your brain health today. As shared, we are a faith-based not-for-profit. We operate in Alexandria, Virginia, along with Fairfax. We have 3 communities that we own and operate. We also have a number of services, including an at-home program, home health rehabilitation, and we're one of the largest hospice providers in our region. And we wanted to share with you something you already know, which is that there are a lot of older adults that are coming and are already here. This chart shows you the progression and the growth of the 75-plus population, really starting back in 2010, going through 2040, and really this chart would continue on to 2060 and beyond a little bit in terms of the continuous growth. And we're right in this moment right now in 2024, which we're experiencing what is known as the peak. So many of you probably have heard the statement that 10,000 older adults are turning 65 every day. And actually today, we're in the high point of this growth of older adults in this country. We're actually having 12,000 people turn 65 every day through the end of 2024. So we're right at the height of when this transition is occurring in our society, really to an older society, one filled with people who've been able to live longer in general, which is a great thing to celebrate. This is a chart that seems to be going the opposite direction. This is a chart of the United States birth rates. And you can see that this chart is going in a negative direction, if you will, where last year it was identified that we had the lowest amount of births as a country in 100 years. So this raises a lot of challenges. I know my wife and I, we have 3 children. They are all teenagers right now. And what I share with them is that I have no concern about them being able to have a job. There's going to be such a large need for individuals, especially in healthcare, that they will definitely be able to be employed if this is a field they want to be employed in. But what this also means is that as we're growing the number of older adults in our country, we do not have enough hands to come around providing care and support for all the needs that will come with that growing older adult population. And the other part of the equation is immigration. If we can't have babies ourselves in this country, we should be able to welcome in people from other countries. And if our policies do not allow us to do that, it will become much harder to have hands available for care. And more of that care will fall on family members and neighbors, loved ones, which probably is already happening to a number of you here on the webinar today.
So with that all in mind, I want to start talking about brain health by first going through some definitions. And if you would like to put a comment in the chat on, what word comes to mind when you think about dementia, we can do that for a moment and just see kind of thoughts that are coming through. Memory loss, yep. Give it a second if anyone else wants to put thoughts in the chat. Inability to function. Hallucinations. Yeah, so when we talk about dementia, fear is another one. I think it's natural for us to really focus on the negative, being totally scared. Someone else put that. So there is a lot that is scary, and there are some things we can do to engage some hope. So first, I want to talk about some of the differences between normal aging, mild cognitive impairment, and dementia. So with normal aging, one thing to know is that everyone experiences slight cognitive changes as we grow older, as we age. And those are things like remembering names a little bit less, or, oh, I walked into the kitchen and I can't remember why I walked in here. Now I have to retrace all my steps. Maybe that word that's on the tip of your tongue, but you can't think of it. These things are frustrating, but they aren't a sign of dementia. It's slight cognitive changes, slight slowing down, but eventually, that word comes back, or maybe you don't remember their name, but you know that you've seen them before. You remember their face. You do retrace your steps, and if it's really important, eventually you remember what you were going to go do in the kitchen. So those things are frustrating. The good news is that it's part of normal aging. It's not getting in the way of your daily life, of your ability to be independent. It might be limiting you a little bit if you're not as social because you can't remember names, but it's ultimately not affecting your day-to-day. Stronger memory, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, can still help improve those frustrating moments, but it's a good thing for us to know that those things can happen and we don't need to panic. We just need to take a deep breath. And usually if we take a deep breath and are a little bit less stressed, that in and of itself can help our cognitive abilities. Now, the next step from that's not a part of normal aging is something called mild cognitive impairment. And at this point, it's most noticeable at first to the individual, but this is also where maybe your friends and family are starting to notice that you're repeating yourself, you're not able to focus as much. Maybe you realize you're out walking or driving and you're getting a little bit turned around when it's a familiar neighborhood. For the most part, you're able to live independently. You're able to make most of your big appointments. Maybe you miss one once in a while, but you remember to eat lunch and dinner and breakfast, you remember to turn the stove off most of the time, but you don't remember a conversation that you had a few days ago. You recognize that there's something more happening. Um, what mild cognitive impairment tells us is that there's something past normal aging. There's something unhealthy about the brain, and where you're in that really early stage. Within 3 to 5 years, 50% of people who have a diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment will develop some form of dementia. So taking notice of these signs, getting yourself screened at your annual doctor's visit can be really important so that you know, okay, is this normal aging, or have we graduated to this step of mild cognitive impairment? And if so, what are some things I can do? Rob mentioned exercise, that's a great one. But what are some things that I can do to keep myself at this MCI, mild cognitive impairment level, or even brain healthy things I can do to improve my brain health and delay that onset of dementia if that's what is coming. So we've talked about normal aging, mild cognitive impairment, and then we have dementia, which is the one that seems just so scary and frightening. Alzheimer's, vascular, Lewy body dementia are the three most common, but there's over 200 kinds of dementia. Often people have a combination of both. And when someone has a diagnosis of dementia, it's started to impact their daily living. So it's not just memory loss, although that is a big component. It's also affecting physical things. It might be harder for them to, harder for you to use, you know, your fine motor skills. So maybe instead of eating a lot of food that we have to cut up, we go to more sandwiches that are handheld. We're a little bit easier. Things like that. That's just one small example. But with dementia, there's that forgetfulness and struggle with executive function, judgment, that is more significantly impaired. So it's a little bit more obvious to others around you, but it's also more obvious to yourself that, hey, I really need some help here because maybe I'm not making my appointments, or I am leaving the stove on a lot and that's dangerous, or I'm not remembering if I've eaten breakfast and lunch. So I'm either not eating enough or I'm eating too much, and that's having health benefit or health challenges. So dementia is where it's impacting more of our daily life. And we want to move towards some proactive steps we can take and not be reactive. Thanks, Rob. So prevention is key. We know that 30% of the American population is over the age of 60, and approximately 12 to 18% of those individuals are living with mild cognitive impairment, or MCI. And I just said earlier, about 50% of people diagnosed with MCI are going to get a dementia diagnosis in the next 5 years. So that's a total of 15 million people who are living with MCI, mild cognitive impairment. And at the same time, we know that this aging population is growing, thinking about those graphs Rob showed at the beginning, and our caregiver workforce is decreasing. So what we really want to do is prevention, and we can prevent some of these things. We can also delay the onset of symptoms, delay the need for care. And what that does is it keeps all of us aging well longer and reduces that need for professional and family caregivers, reduces the cost of caregiving. And the best thing is there are really great ways we can do this that are not medication based. So ways that don't involve taking a bunch of drugs or participating in a clinical trial, those can be great solutions. But we are learning more and more every day that there's a lot we can do outside of that. And so Rob is going to share. Oh, wait, I have one more slide, and then Rob will share our Stronger Memory program. But we wanted to highlight, since this is the Black Caucus on Aging, that African Americans are twice as likely to have Alzheimer's disease. There's also a higher risk for Hispanic Americans to have Alzheimer's disease. And a lot of that is because of other health disparities that exist, stroke, obesity, diabetes, and heart disease. These are all factors that also contribute to someone's risk of Alzheimer's disease or another dementia. And I want to be really clear here that this is not, it's not a genetic disposition. It's not a, lifestyle choice. A lot of it has to do with access, with some of the systemic, racism we have in our country, and the fact that historically, I think African Americans and people of color have not had as much access to healthcare, have not had as much access to health prevention, things like, it's one of the things that's great for dementia prevention is eating a lot of leafy green vegetables. And if you don't live in an area where you have access to that in your grocery store, that can be really challenging. So this isn't a blame game, but we do know that the reality is there are some big health disparities in our country, and that makes people of color more likely to have Alzheimer's disease. And so we at Goodwin Living really want to focus on sharing our free program with people who need it most, so that you can have access and be able to do some of these prevention efforts and reduce that risk. We can't control all of these risk factors, but we can control the ones that we know, like being physically active and doing things like stronger memory. So with that, I'll pass it back to Rob.
Yeah, and a great time just to ask for those here on the webinar to put it in the chat. If you know someone, might be a friend, might be a family member, can you just post, you don't have to put their name, obviously, but to say family or friend, someone that you know that is dealing with dementia, that would be really great to understand and helpful as we go through this journey. Because I want to be able to share with you a very personal journey about my mom, Wendy, as we have the conversation for the next several minutes. And really what happened with her in her late 60s back in 2011 when she's married. My dad and mom actually, they're celebrating their anniversary tomorrow, which will be great. But 3 kids at the time and 6 grandkids, and was falling right into the pattern of mild cognitive impairment. She was becoming very forgetful, repeating herself quite a bit, and getting lost in familiar places as she was driving from place to place. And you can imagine that last one is really scary as you're trying to navigate and people getting lost. That can be a real problem. So my mom is college educated. She's not a smoker. She does not drink heavily at all. She's very social. She gets exercise every day. This has been part of her regimen for a really long time. So from a lot of baseline elements, you'd say she's actually quite healthy, but yet she was still having these symptoms of mild cognitive impairment. And at the time in 2011, I had already been in service to older adults for 9 years. I had committed myself to this field. And there are no cures for dementia. We just don't have any cures at this time as a society, as a world. We're working on it. There's a lot of progress being made in terms of research, but there are no cures. And so without a cure, hope sort of goes out the window too, a little bit. At least it was my experience back in 2011. So I want to share from my mom's perspective what she went through and just to give you that experience.
What I first noticed was that she was repeating herself many times within an hour, 2 hours, and not remembering what she had just said. And that was really frustrating. And it was hard to broach her on that because I didn't want to upset her. And so I actually I think I talked to Rob first, and he indicated that I should talk to her. And when I did talk to Wendy, she said, "Gee, I didn't realize that," and she became very concerned about it and took it very seriously and really wanted to do something to get out from under this problem that she was having.
I think that I knew that I was in a different place. I knew that I was having problems that I wasn't really understanding. So I felt like I lost my number ability. I couldn't multiply, add, I would do it under the table. So I knew that was an issue. I also was having a lot of trouble just recalling. I felt that my focus definitely was being challenged. I was looking for my phone, my keys, I'd put things down, couldn't remember where they were. I think the thing that really scared me was I was driving one day and I was so mixed up going to a place where I've been before. And I am directionally challenged already, but this was alarming. So when Howard brought this to my attention, and then Rob suggested, well, how about taking a test and let's just see what's going on. And the results definitely proved out that I had onset senior dementia in my frontal cortex area that was causing these issues. And we needed to find some solutions, which was not an easy thing to do at that time. I think that I was really frightened, and that would be my response to what was happening. And I wanted to be here for I love being a grandma, and I wanted to be here for my grandchildren and be able to enjoy them, to go to their functions and talk to them and be there in presence.
So that was 2011. You're hearing from my mom. And then really 18 months later, we were able to find a program that was alive and well in Japan, that was working really well for people in skilled nursing environments. And I thought to myself, I wonder if we could take those same attributes from a skilled nursing environment and introduce them upstream earlier in the process. And Jessica will share what came of that result in terms of stronger memory.
Yes, so that is Stronger Memory. It's designed to help those, like Rob said, who have an early diagnosis of dementia, experiencing mild cognitive challenges. And it's designed in a way, there are 3 exercises that trigger activities in your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain right behind your forehead. And research shows that this can help stabilize or improve cognitive functions because they're the part of our brain that controls reasoning, memory, that working memory piece. So what are these 3 exercises? It's reading aloud, writing by hand, and doing simple math quickly. What we found with research that we've done on Stronger Memory, and it's backed up by other research in the field, is that doing these exercises for about 10 minutes each, 20 to 30 minutes total, at least 5 days a week, is going to have a really significant brain health benefit. And they're simple. The reading aloud can be anything you want, anything that is interesting to you. Just challenge yourself to read it aloud. Writing by hand, we have a variety of writing prompts in our Stronger Memory workbook. We have, I think, 200, and we've got some additional special packets as well. But some participants choose to just write about their day and journal. I know Wendy journals. Others write about something academic that they might be reading or that they did in their career. So you can really write about anything. It's that act of handwriting. And then doing simple math. So we're not trying to solve difficult equations. That works a different part of our brain. What we're really doing with these exercises is getting back to the basics for brain health and doing simple math, like 2 plus 2 is 4, 4 plus 2 is 6. It's working that recall that you just kind of know the answer. It's working that focus, that speed of processing. So the easy math, we have several different sections and levels of easy math in our workbook, because that can be the hardest thing to try and find. But it's really not, it's easy not because we think you can't do harder math. It's easy because of the part of the brain that we're trying to work. So simple addition, subtraction may be very easy. Multiplication, but only if you're really a math whiz, is the goal with these stronger memory exercises.
Perfect, Jess. And certainly with the math, what we talk about is no anxiety math. So if you're stressing out about getting the answer right, it's probably too difficult. Hopefully that helps. We actually don't even have an answer key as part of our curriculum. It's more important about doing the problems, going through the exercise of doing the math than it is getting the problems right, which is also important. So, back to my mom and her journey. So now we're fast forwarding. It's been 12 years since she started to do this kind of work, and 3 extra grandkids in the mix. And her brain health is so much better than it was. The only intervention that we introduced was reading out loud, writing by hand, and doing simple math on a daily basis. And I would say my mom is religious about it. She spends every day of the week doing some portion or all 3 portions of this work. And that consistency has allowed her to push off the need for care by at least 12 years, which is tremendously amazing if you think about the gift of having your loved one present and available for you, where most likely without this intervention, she would have been in a dementia care environment, receiving 24-hour support. It would have been a very different outcome had we not introduced this intervention with her. So that's why we're so excited to share this with you all, to hopefully encourage you, excite you about something that has potential, that is no cost. We really don't charge anyone for the curriculum. It's available to everyone. We have it in English and Spanish today. And so we just want to get the word out as prevalently as possible. And of course, we also know that one of the hardest things to do is stay focused on doing things that we know are good for us. So we'll talk more about that in a little bit, what we hope you'll do with today's webinar and information. But let's hear from my mom and dad a little bit more about their journey.
Right now, I'm overjoyed. I think that since I've gotten involved with Rob's new program, Stronger Memory, and I've been focusing, I feel like I'm back in school actually, because I'm doing homework every day. I never let it go by. I might fall asleep while I'm writing my diary, or sometimes my mind floats off because I'm still trying to multitask, which I've learned recently that that's not good for your memory. And so I think that I can see the difference right now. I would say I have the best focus and recall right now that I've had in the 11 years I've been doing this.
Yeah, talking about recall, her recall has become so good that she recalls things that I don't wish her to recall. No, but no, seriously, she has an amazing recall that has improved significantly. I mean, this is much better than it was even before the 11 years ago when she started this. She's amazing. Her recall is far better than mine now, and I think it's because of the program she's been on.
So you would think, based on that, and my dad saying that my mom's recall is better than his, he might get on the program. It's taken me many years, even though his wife has been right next to him, benefiting from this approach, for him to get on board. But I would gladly tell you my dad is more on board today than ever before, starting to read out loud with his old roommates in college, his family that lives in different places across the country. They make a date to read together. So that's happening, and it's really helping his focus, which I think is really positive too. As Jessica indicated, this is research backed. We've been working with George Mason University for a number of years to look at the work that Stronger Memory has been able to produce with our residents at Goodwin Living, certainly with my own parents. And they looked at our original research and said, this is very promising, a non-pharmacological or non-drug pathway to supporting one's cognitive health. This is really, really encouraging. But they wanted to check it out for themselves. So they went and they did an assessment, a clinical assessment for over 100 individuals. And they did a pre-test cognitive test, and they did a post-test following 12 weeks of the program. And the wonderful news was that after 12 weeks of doing this reading out loud, writing by hand, and simple math consistently, those that did do it consistently saw a significant improvement in their cognitive scores and their recall portion in particular. So that should give everyone here hope and excitement, because there's something that we can all do that doesn't require us spending any money, but it does require us spending a little bit of time. The really exciting news was for the portion of people that showed up in the study from George Mason that would have scored in that mild cognitive impaired range. Those individuals had a trend that they improved the most dramatic improvement were for those individuals, an improvement just after 12 weeks of 26% on their cognitive test scores. So you can get pretty excited about those type of things. It's exactly what we saw with my mom. It took just about a month after my mom started doing this work to start to see the transition and the change away from her symptoms. And that stayed consistent with people who've been doing this program for a number of years now. Sort of at the fastest we've seen, maybe 2 weeks, but really it typically takes about 30 days of people doing this work consistently to start to see that transformation that occurs in their brain health. And once you can get that transformation, of course, you can imagine the benefits and the power of that. We've been working really hard, like with groups like National Caucus and Center for Black Aging. We have been working to reach out to a number of organizations throughout the country, certainly within our region of DC and Virginia. But we've also been working with groups like CMS, who is the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. We've had a grant to roll this out to 70 skilled nursing locations in the state of Virginia. And we've been really, really excited about the results and the positive impact that we're having on lives there. We also have been working from day one. Our first partner was the Village to Village Network. This is a network of nearly 50,000 older adults across the country who are wanting to age in place, don't want to move to a community, and they want to have tools to do that better. And so we've had almost 40% of the chapters, 350 chapters of the Village to Village Network, roll this out for their members. And again, with tremendously positive feedback and success for the individuals who get started. So it's really, really exciting for us. And Jess, people probably want to know what they can do who are on this webinar. What should they take forward from our discussion today?
Absolutely. So you can download the free Stronger Memory workbook online at strongermemory.org. You go to that site, there's a link to download. You can purchase it if you want a spiral bound copy, but the idea is that if you download a free copy, you can print it off yourself at no cost to you. And then if you want to start Stronger Memory in your local community or professional community or your faith community, you can email us at strongermemory@goodwinliving.org, and we are able to provide facilitators training. We have one coming up in the next month. We're going to start doing one each month that you can do, but we'll also schedule those as needed to work on your schedule, work with your schedule. We have a facilitator's guide and all the tools that you need to get this started. You can see this photo is from a senior center in Cecil County, Maryland that does Stronger Memory as part of their regular programming. And the participants really enjoy it and have that hope that here's something positive I can do for my brain health. So whether you download it yourself or want to do it as part of a group, we have both of those options available, and we're happy to help get you started.
Yeah, I mean, Jess, as our leader of our brain health team, you've done a great job with your team rolling this out nationally through hundreds of senior centers. And so if you're listening to this webinar or you're going to pick this webinar up afterwards and you want to contact your local senior center, help them get on this path, we don't charge for the curriculum and we don't charge for the training. All of it is supported by the Goodwin Living Foundation. So donors to our foundation have really been providing the resources for us to launch this preventative tool nationally. And if we can help you in your neighborhood or your area, we'd be grateful to do so. With that, Angela, we'd love to turn it over to open up questions and dialogue and thoughts that folks on the webinar might have about the program. Or Keisha.
Hi, thank you so much. It was such great information. I definitely, I'm gonna share with my parents, and I would hope that everyone on the call would share. And I probably am going to download it and start now, and try some of those activities. So some of the questions that we have in the chat that I'll start with, the first one, is what screens or tests do you recommend if someone believes they are experiencing mild cognitive impairment?
Yeah, that's a great question. Certainly you can go to specialists, but honestly, the easiest way is often to start with your primary care physician as part of your Medicare annual wellness visit. It is covered and should be part of that that visit for them to do a cognitive assessment. One that works really well to screen for these types of things is called the MoCA, the Montreal Cognitive Assessment. And if you need help talking to your doctor, there are some resources out there. mybrainguide.org. Let me pull that URL. I can put it in the chat, but mybrainguide.org, which is created through by Us Against Alzheimer's. They have an online questionnaire you can take that will kind of give you a little bit of a screening, and then you can even print out your screening results and some talking points to share with your physician so that you can really ask them, have kind of a very educated starting point for, hey, this is why I want to look at my brain health, because it should be part of that annual wellness visit, but sometimes unless you ask, they might not pull out that screening tool depending on how busy the doctors are. So that's a great first place to start.
Yeah, thank you for that, Jessica, and also for highlighting sometimes it's important that we have to ask, because if we don't ask, sometimes those screens won't be available to us.
Yeah.
So another question that I have here is, do you have to do simple math in your head, or can you use a calculator?
Great question. So ideally, we want it to be so simple that you don't need a calculator. If you need to use a calculator, then it's probably too complicated. We're working different parts of the brain. So if that means that you're doing, 1 + 1, 1 + 2, that's okay. We have it set up in our workbook, you can download for free, that there are different stages of the math, and the earlier stages do kind of follow a pattern. So even if you haven't picked up math in a really long time and it's really challenging for you, if you start with those early stages, you can even repeat those early sections of math, because it really is just that quick focus of, this is, I just know this information. It's what do you know? And there's some research too, like the research that really informed Stronger Memory, where they were doing these types of exercises with individuals who had more advanced dementia, where they were even doing like numeracy and counting. So that is something too, you could count things out instead of doing, you know, math that would need a calculator. You could do some numeracy and counting work.
Okay. Another question is, I know you mentioned the reading out loud, but someone had a question, does music or singing familiar songs every day help with memory?
Yeah, music and the brain's connection is so powerful, and certainly singing and music engages many parts of the brain. So that's definitely a great thing to do for your brain health. Usually there's other components too, like if you're singing in a group, singing socially, it helps reduce your stress, which is another great thing to do for your brain health. So singing can be wonderful for that.
Okay.
I would
Now,
just add,
go
Keisha,
ahead,
to,
Rob. Sorry.
you know, one of the things is we talk about layering on the benefits. So if you're singing, that probably means that you have access maybe to the lyrics. And what I would say is we would love to have is sing every day, then write those lyrics out by hand, right? And then read those out loud again, so that you're really adding and layering in the benefits. So it's great that you have a song. It does have a lot, you know, music has a tremendous impact on the brain's health. And we know that you can do specific stronger memory elements just by getting those lyrics out, writing them down, even if you're copying them, but you're doing the handwriting yourself. That's powerful. That's what we need people to do on a frequent basis, you know, 4 or 5 times, hopefully 7 times a week.
Now, Rob, this question specifically, I think for you, because it says, how should you best intervene to have the talk when you observe your loved one may have memory loss?
Yeah, and Jessica's our trained social worker, so she'll also have a lot of good ideas. I think from my vantage point, my mom wasn't aware, as you heard. She didn't know, and my dad was the one spending time with her, and he said, "Gosh, I'm noticing these things. What should we do?" And at the end of the day, we were able to sit with my mom and say, "Here's what we're noticing, Mom, about you. Are you noticing these things?" So it was really a kind conversation, and she didn't recognize that that was happening. She certainly understood that there could be frustrations if she's repeating herself or forgetting conversations, but it took an important conversation. What I would say is this: most people may not know what they're going through. So it takes someone with kindness and compassion to come around them and to say, look, I think we've got a way to work together. Could you help me with my brain health? I'm really concerned. So instead of putting it on the other person who you're having concerns about, say, I just learned this new program, this new knowledge, and it says I should be reading out loud every day. Would you mind if we met up every day at 8:30 in the morning or 10 o'clock, you know, whatever that time is, and we did some reading together? I'd really appreciate your support and help. So sometimes you don't need to go through the what is going on versus what needs to be done about it. You can start to build in on that. Jessica, do you have other thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it can be a really tough conversation. I mean, when we asked you all to put in the chat what comes to mind when you're talking about dementia or Alzheimer's disease, everyone put a lot of people put things like fear into the chat. So what I will say is it's important to come at these conversations as a team, as a family. You know, if you're talking to a family member or a spouse or partner, or even a close friend, try to have the conversation, you know, sitting down, you're both at the same level, both sitting on the same side of the table or the same side of the couch. So it doesn't feel like it's me against you, and come from that place of care. I think the other thing to really talk to the person about, there are medical medical challenges, there are vitamin deficiencies, infection, things that can cause some cognitive challenges that actually are fixable and reversible. So coming at it from that angle of, hey, I'm curious, I've noticed that maybe you're having, you know, you're repeating yourself a little bit more, or I've noticed that you seem to struggle with directions when you're driving a little bit more. Would you be open to talking to your doctor about it? Or would you be open to taking the online, screening about it? And really sharing that it's because early intervention, early detection can help, and not jumping to kind of that panic of, oh my gosh, I think you might have dementia, we need to go to the doctor. That's very scary. But just kind of taking baby steps of, hey, can we get a screening done? We should check, like, do you want to check what your baseline is too? That can be really helpful there.
Yeah, and
Um,
I would just
oh,
add on
go-
that, Keisha, one other thought and consideration is that, for my mom, who had to have this figured out by family intervening, I would just say there's so much that we can do now that what Jessica just said at the very end is really critical, right? Once you have awareness, you can do something about it. The 2 times that my mom in the last 12 years has slid back in her brain health. One time was she started to take on too difficult of math, and it was creating a lot of anxiety for her when she was doing her homework, so to speak, every day. So she stopped doing the hard math, and all of a sudden, within a week, her brain health went back to being strong. So that was one instance. The second was when she had a urinary tract infection. Oftentimes, people think, that memory loss happens or cognitive decline happens very quickly. It's very rare for cognitive decline to happen very rapidly. So if you see a sudden change of a loved one, neither Jess or I are doctors, but we would say that's probably a good sign that you have a urinary tract infection or something else is happening, not necessarily a dementia circumstance. So getting checked out quickly would be very important.
I just wanted to share with you some other comments that were in the chat before I ask the next questions, but outstanding, very informative, great programs for a senior center. Someone has offered to speak to the director of their senior center in their town in South Carolina.
Awesome.
So great comments. Thank you for sharing, everyone. So I'm going to go to the next question. As exercise, I was informed that trampoline jumping is beneficial for brain health and overall the body. Could you speak to this?
I know exercise in general is great for brain health and your body. I have not heard about trampoline jumping specifically. So I'm going to add that to my list of things to look into, and I can always follow up with Keisha and Angela if I find anything interesting there. But I've not heard that one. That's a new one. But certainly physical exercise in general, anything that's getting your heart rate slightly elevated, so that light aerobic exercise, we're breathing in more oxygen, getting our blood more oxygenated, and all that oxygenated blood goes up to our brain and helps our brain as well as helping our body. So exercise in general is really great. And if that's what you're doing when you're on the trampoline, then that's getting that benefit, at least in that way. I don't know if it does anything else. I'm gonna have to look that up.
And it's typically the literature that we see is about 150 minutes of that impact exercise that Jessica was just referencing a week is really the amount that will help with one's health, both heart health and brain health. I would just say on the exercise front, we have a number of folks that have been doing this program for a number of years, and one lady, her name, she has a neighbors, and she walks her dog, but she was starting to not enjoy that as much because when she went out to walk her dog, she didn't recall the neighbors' names. So she was becoming more isolated in her activities. When she started to do stronger memory, she started to feel more confident that she could go out into the neighborhood. And lo and behold, just a couple of weeks after she started the program, she was recalling both the neighbors' names, but also their dogs' names. So now she's making that correlation and check-in, and now she's exercising more, which is a big win for her and certainly for her health overall. So people can start to really close themselves up if they don't feel confident going into a social setting. And hopefully, Stronger Memory is one tool to help combat against that.
Okay. Now, I have another question, and this one's not in the chat, but it's one that I have. So I see that we can download the workbook, and it's in English and in Spanish. If someone had, they didn't have access to a computer or a printer and they could not download it, is there any resources or any location that we can go out there and someone could actually request a printed book or workbook?
Yeah, so online, you are able to request a printed workbook. We do sell them just at cost, the cost of printing. If that's a barrier, you can always email us and let us know. We can see what we can do. You can email or call us. We can talk on the phone as well. And so if you don't have access to a computer, sometimes even just going to the library could be a good way to see if you can either print out a couple pages or go and send us an email. The other thing that some people do with the reading aloud, you're really able to read whatever you like aloud. With the math, flashcards can be if you go to the dollar store and get some flashcards, that can be an easy reusable way to do some of the math, so you don't have to print it out. And with the writing, the writing prompts are online, but you can get a notebook or really write on any kind of paper. So we try to make it accessible as long as you're doing those exercises. But yes, you can also email us and you can purchase the printed copy online.
And I remember, Keisha, we had a resident who looked at our program and said, gosh, this sounds great, but I don't have any cognitive challenges. I don't really need to do this program, but I do read the Bible every day. And so I've just decided I'm going to start reading it out loud. And she said, it's amazing. My focus is so much better. So that's really important, is we've come to the table with a curriculum that we spent a good amount of time, curating, creating, making sure it was accessible to folks. But no one has to use our material if they don't want to. All the materials that you need are right in your own home today, and you can get started. What then becomes important is, how do you stay focused on doing the work? And that's where having a friend, having a family member, having a neighbor, someone from your church or your mosque or whatever that is, come around you and say, let's do this together. The social connectivity and the social accountability becomes really important. And where we've seen the most success is when people are connecting and checking in once a week with a group to say, hey, how's it going for you? Oh, it's going like this, or how's it going for you? And then creating those relationships to allow for those partnerships for reading, writing, and doing that quick math together. So that's where it really, really becomes important.
Thank you for sharing that, Rob. That's really important. And I like that you said everything that our participants need is at home. You have it already. And so that's really important. Thank you for that. Now, I have another question. At what age do you suggest, or has it been researched, that you should begin this program? Or, so when should you start?
That's a great question. There is some research out there that says, starting brain healthy habits at the age of 25 can be great. It's never too late to start, but starting early is great. It's never too early, especially for the ones that are the biggest effect, I think. Exercise, getting good sleep. There's a lot of things we can do that are good for our overall health and our brain health. I do the Stronger Memory exercises, especially before I have to give a presentation. I'll try to do some of the math, and that helps me focus and concentrate. So it's never too early to get started. It's also never too late, though. We have seen people who get started with this in their 80s and 90s and still see some benefit if they're doing it for those, 20 to 30 minutes a day, 4 or 5 days a week at minimum.
Okay, Rob answered the question, thank you, but I'm gonna read it for everyone else maybe. Someone asked, what about using audiobooks? And so Rob, can I read your comment that you said, and then Jessica, you
Sure.
can jump in. Rob said, I am a fan of audiobooks, though that involves listening, and it is in the reading aloud that gets the brain activated. So Jessica, you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'll just add that that is Rob's absolutely right. With stronger memory, the part of the brain that we're trying to activate is with audiobooks, audio recordings. That's activating a different part of the brain. Reading aloud and the actual act of saying the words aloud, visually processing is what we're looking for in stronger memory. But audiobooks are great, and it's certainly more stimulating than often what the alternative is, which might be, watching TV or looking out the window, not really thinking about much. Audiobooks can be a great way to stimulate your brain, and to access books, especially if there is, vision impairment. That can be a great thing to do. Just a different part of the brain than stronger memory. So it might not boost your recall, but it's certainly going to help your vocabulary and other things.
But if you listen to that book and then write a summary of it, or write a few things down by hand afterwards, then you're right back in the game. So you can do both, for sure.
Thanks. Okay, thank you. So we're at 1:59, and I'm going to be mindful of everyone's time as we get ready to close this up. But it's one more question. It's a comment. I'm sorry. Maybe I'll read that before I close. It says, when you live alone, reading aloud is soothing to me because I have an audience, me. So thank you for sharing. But it's promptly 2:00. And so I just want to thank everyone for attending our webinar today. And I also want you all to know that shortly after this webinar ends, you will all be receiving a survey on behalf of NCBA. And this survey is to help us learn how much you enjoyed the webinar, or what other webinars you would like to hear from us, and what webinars we can sponsor to be able to help you all. I think Jessica and Rob did an excellent job today in sharing this information with us. And I definitely am going to go to strongermemory.org, and I'm going to download the book and start doing that soon. And so I really appreciate the information. So Ms. Telesford, I'm going to turn it back over to you now, but thank you, Jessica and Rob. Thank you.
An honor. Thank you.
Yes, I am also thanking Jessica and Rob for such an informative presentation, spirited, and as Keisha mentioned, the information is available to all. We do not have to go and spend an exorbitant amount of money to get this done. I know that I am definitely will be a starter very soon. So thank you again. We appreciate you, and I'll be calling you again for another follow-up to this webinar. Thank you. Yes. And as Keisha mentioned, please complete the survey for us. It will help us to better serve you, and to know what webinars to bring to you that you are that's of interest and to you. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.